There's a strong connection between motion and emotion. For cyclists around the world, the joy of learning to pedal a bike can last a lifetime.
It was a really nice experience with my father. He would run behind me and would hold up the bike and run along while I was pedaling. And then one day I was biking along and I turned around and he wasn't there. And I realized that I had balanced on my bicycle on my own, and it was just the best feeling in the world.
I started cycling when I was a kid, and it was a red bicycle, and I still have it.
My first bike was red. I remember my childhood with this red bike as something that gave me a big adventure.
Getting a two-wheeler allowed me to be a grown-up for the first time. I could go off and visit friends. I could be alone. I wasn't relying on my mother.
I got my first bike maybe at the age of 4 or 5, and suddenly I was on my own. I could go where I wanted. It was freedom.
Actually going down the block, no tricycles on the bike, nobody holding the back of me, all by myself on the bike. I was like the moment when my uncle knew, okay, this is when he's gonna start riding and trying to kill himself on the bike.
My own cycling saga began 7 decades ago with a frightening event that is my earliest childhood memory. Before I'd learned to balance on 2 wheels, I spent afternoons pedaling my tricycle around the sailboat pond in Central Park. One day I flipped over the edge and lay pinned to the bottom beneath my trike, unable to breathe, until a kind stranger pulled me out. Despite such an inauspicious start, I've rediscovered my passion for cycling. Once again, I ride a 3-wheel chariot, which lets me explore our planet in comfort, interact with its inhabitants, exercise, and still sit on my butt all day. I pedal at speeds that suit my vintage legs and inquisitive eyes, so I see people and places at an intimate pace, from a quiet, well-ventilated vehicle. I'm after memorable experiences, not mere miles. Along the way, I meet other folks who have found in cycling the same joy, the same sense of power, speed, and freedom that we felt as kids.
When I ride, I go to a place that's disconnected from all my problems, and I can just really have a good time, and mainly it just makes me feel like a kid again.
Now I'm well into middle age, and I've made this machine and I sit in it, and I am re-experiencing that childlike joy. And I try to explain it to my friends, and they think I need medication. I'm inside this thing going, yes. Then I come home, I take my shower, and I go to work.
At the Kinetic Sculpture Race in Humboldt County, California, the joy of cycling is celebrated during an exuberant 3-day contest of creativity, engineering, and endurance.
Throw front treads, my front wheel. Dead man strike, over the top.
Okay, we're clear. All right, guys. All right.
Anybody see any lame ducks?
You're about a half hour ahead of you.
Oh, they're not too lame, I guess.
Like music, cycling is an international language that transcends geographic boundaries.
I was born in Britain. I live in New England, a very fine place to bicycle, and I'm on a German bike.
I'm from Germany and I bought this English folding bike.
We're from the Philippines.
And our bikes are from Italy.
I'm Jean, I'm from Stockport in Cheshire, UK, and my bicycle was made in Seattle, USA, and I bought it from a New Zealander.
We're both from New Zealand. Our bikes are made in Taiwan, but they're Canadian models, and we bought them in London.
I am from Holland, and I have a Dutch and an English bicycle.
My bike comes from Canada. I live in France, and I ride my bike in Greece.
We are from Poland, our bicycles are from Italy.
We live in Helsinki, Finland, and I use two bikes, a French and a British one.
We are here in the province of Limon, on the Caribbean side of Costa Rica, and this bicycle is made in China.
The bike I ride in Denmark is manufactured in Norway.
I come from New Jersey. The bike comes from all over the world. Being a member of the Human Powered Vehicle Association, we share ideas.
I don't know. I have a bicycle.
The farther I wander on my journeys, the more I'm reminded of the universality of the cycling experience. In a Central American village, where bicycles are an essential part of everyday life, I'm struck by one boy's perseverance, despite his difficulties. Another example of just how international cycling can be is the conference bike. The 7-seater was designed by an American who lives in Holland. The trike lives in Britain and is pedaled by visitors from many different nations.
Looking for ideas that will really happen using the centre of the basket.
What about some sort of energy gauge to see how hard people are pedaling?
Oh, that'd be great.
Eric Stahle conceived it as a mobile icebreaker and peacemaker. He envisioned the leaders of warring nations joined in laughter as they pedaled together on his conference table on wheels.
No, music, it's the music part.
How long have you been
I'm going to say, because just imagine you doing this sort of thing with the head jobs as we go along. You know? We could always drive headless. Oh, thank you. Hey!
My favorite cycle is a low trike, which I can ride all day without a numb neck or battered bottom. With 3 wheels, I don't need to put my feet down till I get off. On wet, sandy, and icy roads, my trike and I have lots of stability. Fast turns, however, can lift a wheel and flip the trike, so upper body lean is essential and part of the fun. But when it comes to favorite bikes, it's different spokes for different folks.
I have a mountain bike which has jarred my vertebrae in such a way that I needed to go buy a recumbent bike. But the recumbent bike wasn't quite as fast as my road bike, which I went and bought to go faster, and I need a folder for those times when I have to travel somewhere. And then I would also like to have a unicycle too.
My favorite bike is our tandem. We always get up the hills together. We have a conversation the whole way, all day long.
Our favorite bikes are road bikes.
Speed bike, racing bikes.
Mountain bikes to go play in the hills.
Son más duras y más resistentes. They hold on.
I like to be off the road, off the pavement, and in the woods.
I have a mountain bike for pleasure, a folder for business, This recumbent for commuting and then a recumbent trike for touring on.
My favorite bike is whichever bike I haven't ridden for a couple of weeks.
That has wheels, I ride.
And I get on it in that morning and I always say to myself, wow, I've forgotten how much I like this bike.
The recumbent, which is very comfortable. Low, horizontal, flat bikes. And I like them because it takes a lot less energy. At my age, at 67, you can't afford to be using up your precious bodily fluids trying to push yourself through the air.
I like it to be red, and I like it to have at least 2 wheels.
Some cyclists who aren't happy with existing options build their own machines. All they need is talent, tools, and lots of time.
I built it out of muffler pipe, and the contraption actually worked. And it was such an intoxicating feeling that something you built from scratch you could actually ride. And I was hooked after that.
The Wright brothers were bicycle builders before they were airplane builders.
The idea of the dual position bike was the quest to try and combine in some way the 2 positions on the one bike. I hadn't seen anything on the lines that I was thinking of, so I thought the only way was to actually make one to see if the idea would work. I ride in the upright position if I was in busy traffic or certainly on a hilly section. The other time is if I just don't want to be noticed as much. On the conventional upright, after riding for an hour or 2, I'll start to suffer with stiff neck and shoulders, and that's why I ride recumbent more.
Well, these are a couple of the toys that I keep in the studio. One of the things about HPVs is the overall shape and form, the aerodynamic laminar flow being so important. But also, they're toys, and I find myself staring at toys and enjoying them, and I wonder if that joy isn't very similar to what I'm experiencing when I ride them.
How do I brake?
Light up.
Okay.
Bye. Come back.
My ultimate aim is to have a bike which something that you push a button and it'll give like 2 people are pushing you up a hill.
It's strange how people become interested in power assist as they get older, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Solo cycling means freedom to improvise, freedom to dawdle on a whim or ride half the night. Yet, I'm never entirely alone. I have 2 part-time fellow travelers that affect my speed, wind and gravity. When they're on my side, I fly. 2 full-time companions guide my journeys whenever I pay attention to them, my compass and my map. But even if I ignore them and miss the route, my occasional consorts, Lady Luck and Serendipity, delight me with surprises. But after a long solo stretch, I welcome the camaraderie and energy of a group ride. At Open Road Cycling Event in York, England, I discover some of the dynamics of a successful ride with leader Paul Stobbs.
The best rides are probably ones where the people that happen to be with me get on well. There's laughter and good conversation of a jovial sort. The riders' styles are similar in terms of their aims, and it makes really good rides when you come across places that are unexpected bonuses that might not have even been known by the leader, and it makes a group become a family.
The part that Paul played was to keep the ride together. When there's some people, we've had punctures, we've had various mechanical problems, we've got our child in the trailer, so keeping the whole ride together is no small job, and Paul made a good job of it today, and it was a nice ride.
And as for a bad ride, well, that's perhaps when the weather's bad or you get problems, but even worse, mishaps. One of the black marks against any ride leader is losing riders, getting back and having riders not accounted for.
I mean, I'll go back
But she was slowing down considerably. What?
She's here? Fantastic!
I'm back.
It's wonderful when that lost sheep suddenly appears.
During mass events like New York City's 5-borough ride, we pedaled faster than we could drive cars during rush hour.
Watch your speed. Left turn up ahead. Left turn. Watch your speed. You're at the 22-mile point. You're looking good. 22-mile point. Looking good. Left turn up ahead.
Many early roads were built primarily for cycles, and now cities around the world are beginning to reclaim streets for walking and biking during car-free days.
This is incredible! Look at this. This is awesome.
This is my first ride. It's my boyfriend's third. Love it so far.
Awesome.
Great day. It's like a dream.
Being able to be out on major highways with huge numbers of cyclists is a real thrill. Not having to worry about vehicular traffic.
Vitamin C! Get your vitamin C! Great oranges! Great oranges! Here's just for you! You deserve it! We cut them especially for you guys! Come on!
It's just a great ride. Lots of people, get to see the city.
Going through the different boroughs and the different neighborhoods, it just brings it all together.
The nicest thing about it is just being able to enjoy the city.
Like the sights, and I didn't like the crowd.
And all the pretty girls.
Events like this make it easy to envision sane, healthy, quiet ways for us to travel, using muscle as our engine, pasta as our fuel. Wet and lonely times trigger a vague sense of anxiety and helplessness, half recalled from the age of 3.
Doesn't bode well. Thistle. Stay out of that thistle. I'm in the thistle. Oh no, bike is falling. Damn.
But at least now I keep my head above water. My only bike accidents have been due to my own carelessness or nasty dogs. I have a healthy respect for cars and trucks, so I watch traffic in all directions, with the help of 2 rear-view mirrors. Which safety matter most? Depends who I ask.
Well, first and above all, I wear a helmet.
I always wear gloves on my hands regardless of the weather in case I fall.
To give a sign to the people when you are turning left and right.
A large yellow triangle on the back.
Stay on the right-hand side of the road, at least in this country.
A tall orange flag and brightly colored clothing.
Good working brakes, because without it, everything stops.
The lights that I'm running on both the front and the back and on my head are pretty much the brightest lights that I could afford. My safety's worth it.
Don't go biking on roads with huge lorries on them.
Yield to everything. Assume that I'm invisible to the cars until I know otherwise.
A car driver blinking left or blinking right. In Paris, usually if he blinks left, he's going to turn right.
I've had my worst crash on a bicycle without brakes. I blocked the front wheel with my foot, flipping over and hurting myself very bad.
So I just crashed and just slid on the pavement wearing a tank top and shorts and just
burned like all my skin.
I hit a large stone which jumped up and lodged between my spokes and threw me off the front of the bicycle.
Had objects thrown at me, left for dead by several hit-and-run drivers.
I was hit by a car here in New York City from behind.
A convertible passed me with a young man in the back, and he had a lasso.
Went flying into the street.
And he saw me as a target of opportunity, and he flung the lasso at me.
But I was okay, and the bike is fixed, and I'm still riding.
If I mention this to most people, they say, what the heck do you do to attract this sort of violence? But I guarantee if you get some dedicated bicyclists who bike year-round, they'll all have the same story.
I've never had a serious crash on a bike, and I've never had a serious close call in traffic.
I was hit by a car broadside while I was commuting home from work, and it bent the bike pretty much in 90 degrees.
I can't think of anything horrible that's ever happened. I mean, I've had a few accidents, broken a leg, cracked some ribs, but other than that...
I meant to do that, yes.
We've been caught.
If I were young, would I race? I love speed and competition. With all that pain and need to train, I'm not sure.
And 74, please be ready. Go!
Near Paris, I meet international racer Emmanuel Renier, whose philosophy of cycling fascinates me.
I am a triathlete, and I've raced 10 Ironman. Dominic is my husband and also my coach and also the father of our child. I think after meeting my husband, I became a better racer because I had found my balance. I had found what was important in life, what was not so important. It's very hard to explain. It's the history of the athlete that will enable him to become a good racer. The physical aspect only comes in second. A lot of cyclists are very good at training, but on race day, something is missing because it's something that's not in the muscle. You have to go beyond some thresholds to explore new dimensions of pain. What I notice in races is that the men, they start out very fast, they pass, and at the end, some of them are crying on the side of the road and they tear apart their number on their jersey. And the women, they stick in there, they resist more. Mm-hmm. Some scientists say that the woman, just from being able to have children, he's fruitful and has more instinct of survival. And she will not quit a race as easy as a man, for example.
Certains peuvent dire le contraire.
But you have the opposite opinion too.
Yes.
With my face in the wind and my head near ground level, flying downhill is pure joy. It's the exhilarating reward for a long climb and the momentum needed for a head start up the next hill. Looking at the sky decreases my sense of motion. Looking at the road multiplies it. But if I watch the asphalt for potholes and broken glass, I miss the moon. If I watch my speedometer, I miss the roses. Cycling nourishes my mind, body, and spirit. I cycle for weeks at a time to enjoy the simple life. one focused on navigation, food, and shelter. When I find a refuge at night, it becomes my oasis, my harbor. When it's late and stormy, my haven. I ride to explore my internal world, as well as the external one. But my reasons for riding are just the beginning.
You get to see more of the country, and it's a more relaxed way to travel.
I can't walk more than 5 minutes without a cane or being in pain. But once I get on the bike, I can bike 50, 60 miles without a problem.
Bicycle is what everybody uses here in Costa Rica instead of a car.
To get places fast.
To get some bread in the morning.
To come into work.
Like the anger management aspects after work.
I think it's fun.
It's addictive.
I ride because I like to be outdoors.
You get to see the countryside from a different perspective. You're more tempted to stop.
A mí me gusta andar en bicicleta.
When I was young, I couldn't afford a car, you see, so we just had to get bikes.
I don't have a car. I don't really see the need.
I still can't afford a car.
With a bicycle, if something goes wrong, I can fix it myself.
My view is it's worse doing the hills because I love whizzing down the other side.
Independence and it's endorphins.
Mainly it's because we meet such really nice people.
I like to ride a bike because I like to ride with people, and I like to look at stuff.
The best way to see stuff.
And I like to go down hills.
I just love to ride for the pure joy of it.
Oh, it's the wind through my helmet, the wind through my hair, the wind encircling my body. It's the exhilarating feeling of flying.
I'm excited to meet Dr. Colin Guthrie, Glasgow's Poet Laureate of the High Trike.
We've all had birds flying down through our spokes and coming out the other side. There's a wonderful naturalness about it. And I just feel the better for it every time I've gone on about it and got off at the other end.
Right, kids, I'll get you some sweets tonight, but please be nice to your mum and tidy up your rooms, okay? Bye.
We embraced cycling and tricycles, but we went one step further and reinforced that by, to a certain extent, rejecting the whole concept of a family having to own a motor car. One of the wonderful things about the bike is it gives you as a human being the opportunity to improve physically and mentally. With other forms of transport, like getting in a car, the more you use a car, the more decrepit it gets. Whereas the more you use your body, the better it gets. There's something about the feeling of being on a bike that chimes so perfectly with me. It's so natural. The smooth way that you progress, the things that you see, the silence. It's not just the wind in your hair, it's almost like having the wind in your soul. In the last 14 years, I haven't used a car at all in my work as a doctor in Glasgow. And on one or two celebrated occasions, I've got to the scene of a heart attack quicker than the ambulance.
One of my favorite cycling experiences was touring in Europe for 5 days in a 45-mile-per-hour gale with two of my sons. Great biking memories remind me of the connection between motion and emotion.
Best experience, early morning, Bordeaux, following the Dordogne River with the autumnal colours reflected in that magnificent river.
Cycling on the Lofoten Islands, there you see the mountains, the sea and the other side, and the red houses in the water.
And we climbed and climbed and climbed all morning, and finally we got to the top and went over, and it was really fantastic.
Every night we would knock at people's homes, ask for a little place on their yard to pitch our tent and just a little bit of water. And they would say, "Oh, you're pregnant, and come and have a shower." We ended up with a bed, with dinner ready for us, with a shower and our laundry done. From Miami to San Francisco, this is true.
When I was in Malaysia, I stopped to help a Muslim girl who had a flat tire.
In Bali, and someone invited me into his house and introduced me to his daughter, and I think he wanted to offer me her hand in marriage.
And so I had the right size tube to fix it for her, And so she seemed happy and I was happy even though we didn't speak a common language.
It was an AIDS benefit ride back in September from Boston to New York, 275 miles. And being in the companionship of over 3,100 riders and 700 crew. It's the best thing I've ever done in my entire life.
We lit a fire. We wanted to make kebabs. The only thing we could do is remove the spokes from our wheels and make up little kebabs like that and cook them and remove them from the fire with other spokes. And then the next day putting them back on was a slightly greasy affair.
It's a finish the Ironman.
Mountain bike riding, probably in Aspen.
112 miles in a bike. It's a great moment for me.
On the government trail, which is like a 12-mile trail. Almost all downhill.
40 kilometers downhill race in Japan.
I'd go over a pass like in the Alps, and there'd be a long, steep, curving downhill. Clean road, you can see well ahead, no sense of danger. You can go as fast as you want. Just an exhilarating experience.
70 years after taking the plunge, I'm once again triking on water. But I finally figured out how to stay high and dry. The seasons race by, faster and faster. But I appreciate them more now than I did when I was immortal. I've come full circle in my second childhood, full cycle, riding once again a three-wheel vehicle that seems to magnify my puny physical efforts into a celebration of life. And on those journeys when I re-experience childlike joy, or when the wind penetrates my soul, I'm transported into states of exaltation.